that Steve had a big burning question that just an answer, we need an answer on this. Is there enough evidence right now to push through for this emergency authorization use of hydroxychloroquine?
100%. The Henry Ford study showed a 51% reduction in mortality of hospitalized patients taking hydroxychloroquine versus those without. We've seen this around the world. The president needs to stand up, be tall, and take some courage here, because the evidence would support an emergency use authorization unquestionably.
On that note, I want to throw it over to the stage now. Stephen K. Bannon and Jack Posobiec, take us away.
You know, given the report we had last week, I would almost tell the president, I'd call the interim head of the FDA, and if he didn't make the decision, I think I'd get a new interim head of the FDA. This is serious. I mean, I think we're in an inflection point. This is either a pandemic or it's not a pandemic. You know, we've allowed the mainstream media and Fauci and these guys kind of define it on their terms. It ought to be defined on the terms of reality. You know, from facts come truth. I think that was Mao's great saying, right? Or Deng Xiaoping. From facts come truth. Let's get down to the facts. That almost 150,000 American citizens dead. And we can't pick and choose. There's enough scientific evidence from enough smart people and enough studies done from NIH to the Ford Institute up in Michigan and others, and prominent voices. Now this emergency use authorization ought to be, the trigger ought to be pulled on this. And I think this is about driving action and not playing games anymore. There's just too many games being played. There's too many roadblocks being put into place. And I think it's time for action. I want to get into a whole bunch in this. But Raheem, I think you told us just before we went to break, Don Jr. has now been, Don Jr. has been suspended by Jack Dorsey and the team at Twitter. You know, when you look at the Chinese Communist Party, I've said from day one, you want to take down the CCP? I can take down the CCP in 90 days to 6 months. I got two weapons. You take down the firewall, social media, bang, they all start coming to the U.S. on social media platforms. That's a thermonuclear weapon pointed at the heart of the CCP. The other is U.S. dollar. But you look at the social media platforms, we've allowed Jack Dorsey, and now we're allowing Jack Dorsey and these guys to start to define the entire political process, not just the conversation. Tell me what was wrong, and we got to go back. We'll check in the war room what was wrong with Jenny Beth Martin and the group of physicians that were up there yesterday on Capitol Hill, which is what Don Jr. tweeted out along with ours. The war room was not pulled down, right? But the others were pulled down. We got to get to the bottom of it because we're allowing Jack Dorsey to do it. Now, the tech guys are coming to Capitol Hill today. I know and want to get CCP and I want to get Portland and all of it. But where I got Jack Posobiec up here, tell me, those guys are coming to Capitol Hill today. You're finally getting some of the big tech guys up there. And I think the conservatives, and particularly the Austrian School of Economic guys, have made a major mistake in allowing these tech companies to get too big and too powerful and too out of control. The top, I think, 5 or 6, 7, 8 tech companies, market capitalizations today are greater than the entire stock exchange of Tokyo, with all the great industrial companies that the Japanese have. These have enormous power, and the power is only it's growing exponentially. And you're seeing what they're going to do with the power. They're going to choke down Don Jr. Don Jr. is not just a son of the President of the United States. He's one of the most prominent and powerful voices in the Trump movement, the conservative movement. Yet Jack Dorsey, you know, some pencil-neck soy boy from San Francisco can determine and pull him down and take his voice off. Oh, you got a timeout. You can come back in what, 12 hours? I mean, this is what we've allowed to happen. So, Posobiec, what do you think ought to happen on Capitol Hill today? And I think it's time that the conservative movement really understand that these big tech companies, you know, the Cato Institute and all these guys want to give them all the tax breaks and let them consolidate power. They're out of control. They've got to be treated like public utilities. I think they've got to be both broken up, just like we did the Bell system back in the 80s. They've got to be broken up, and they've got to be regulated. These are public utilities, and we've allowed these things to get out of control, and you've allowed Bezos and these guys to become wealthier than nations. And with that wealth, they're applying what? They bought the Washington Post. You see the Washington Post every day pounding the President of the United States. Don't think that's not going to happen with other of these multi-billionaires, right? They're just going to take this and go.